Alright guys, so the first thing you want to do here is drill a hole through one of the 3-way pipe splitters. You want to drill it through the center of the pipe splitter, as you can see I'm doing here.
So normally when I make this, I usually use this screw and put it inside here. The main reason why you want this screw to be going through here is just because the link, you don't want it to collide with this. The screw side, the bolt size is actually a 9/16. The metric is probably 14 millimeters or 15 millimeters. That's pretty much it right there. That's how you would bolt it on. And then you just run this wire through there. You don't actually want to glue this to the pipe. You just want to put it in nice and tightly. This part should never slip off the pipe. And the reason why you don't want to glue this down is so that way you can adjust it left to right. The angle will have to be adjusted through here, but for the most part you won't need to adjust this left to right. But it's always good to have that option, and it's always good to have this so that you can take it apart, you know, just in case this light ever goes out. You don't have to remake the pole. You can just pull this piece off, take off the bolt, put it back in. It'll never come off. I've never actually had one of these come off on me before while I was gigging. The only time I ever had my gig light come apart on me is where the handle comes together, but we're going to glue the handle together so we won't have that problem.
So for a main section of our gigging lights, we're going to need one whole 10-foot section of 3/4 inch PVC pipe, and from that you're going to need to cut out two 44-inch sections. This will be determined by how tall you are. I'm about 5'9", and two 44-inch sections is good for about up to like maybe like 6 foot 6'2". If you're shorter, you're going to want to make those first two sections shorter. You know, you'll just have to play with it and adjust it to your height. And then from that, you'll need at least two 15-inch sections, and then another two 5-inch sections. So as you can see from me assembling this gigging light, the first section you want to start off with is the 44-inch section, and then I put a 3-way on there, and then I top it off with the 15-inch section, and then on the split I put in the 5-inch pipe, as you can see here. And then once that 5-inch pipe is put in, you'll put in another 3-way to complete the handle section. So essentially for each gig light, what you'll need is one 44-inch section, one 15-inch section, one 5-inch section, and three 3-way splitters. And you know, one splitter will be used for the actual light mount, and then two of the splitters will be used for the handle itself.
You're going to want to make it straight with this pipe, as you see here.
Here, actually notice I put one of the wrong pieces on here, so I had to take it back apart and glue the right 44-inch piece on there. I guess this is one of the situations where it's good not to have a bunch of extra pieces laying around, so that way you don't accidentally grab the wrong one. So here I'm using audio cable. I'm running the wire through the pipe first and then soldering it onto the lights. I'm using 3M electrical tape. I prefer this over other brands. I find that the 3M just seems to work better. You want to wrap these wires pretty tight because these wires will be underwater. And so I usually wrap each wire, and then once those are wrapped, I will then wrap the entire wire over again. And I find that the 3M tape just seems to hold up better underwater too. It doesn't seem to come apart as easy as the other tapes. Alright, for some reason my camera wasn't recording sound. So what I'm doing here is I'm making the wires or the connectors. There's the alligator clips to clip on a battery, and then in my right hand is the wire that I'm going to use to make two different plugs. In this situation, the red and the white is going to be my hot wires, so that's for the positive, and the black and the green is going to be my ground wires, and I'm going to go ahead and solder those onto the gator clips that will go onto the battery itself. Alright, so here I'm showing you guys how to install the connectors. This particular connector, you clamp it down with the two pins that are sticking up, and then from here, after I clamp these down, I'll go ahead and solder them down. This will help ensure that I'll get good contact with the salt air and everything. You know, you'll get a lot of corrosion, and soldering it will ensure that the connection will stay good. You generally don't have to use the connectors that I used here. There's plenty of other different type of plugs out there, and you can use those if you want. But this particular connector, I'm using it just because it looks a little bit nicer, and it also makes it easier to plug in and out of the battery. Here I'm installing the male connector to the gig light side of the wires. It's pretty much the same process of the female connectors. You have to clamp it down, and then once it's clamped down, I'm going to go ahead and solder everything together. Now for you, the wires might be a little bit different, but for me, in my situation, just remember white and red was my hot wire, and green and black were my ground wires. So what I'm going to want to do is pair off the one positive and one negative for each one of the plugs for the gig lights. Alright, so here I'm checking my other plug because I want them both to match as far as which side the positive and negative connections are. This is important if you're going to use the same plug as me, because you don't want to have to worry about accidentally plugging the wrong switch into the wrong side and then getting, mixing up the positive and negative and shorting out the battery or the lights. So here, when you put in the mail in, the connections, you want to make sure that they're in there properly, that they're seated all the way in, because if they're not seated in all the way, then they will come loose when you plug them. The way you know if they're seated properly is when you clip them in, and you should be able to tug on the wires a little bit and not be able to, break them loose. And if they're in there tight, they won't come loose when you plug them in and out over time. So here, you want to make sure that you put the right wire into the right barrel. In this particular situation, the right side was the positive and the left side was the negative. In this particular situation, the wire was kind of hard to push in and kind of clip it in just by pushing on it. I ended up having to push it in a little bit and then using my pliers to kind of pull it all the way through. When you pull it all the way through, you can actually kind of hear it pop into place. Once it pops into place, it won't come loose again after that, and you'll be good to go. Alright, even though they have those little rubber seals in the barrels, I decided to put electrical tape around the ends of them anyways. This will ensure that the water doesn't get into the wiring or the seals. Here I'm showing you how the lights look and how they work. It's still daylight outside, so they don't look as bright as they actually are, but they're pretty bright. They're either 800 lumens each or 1600 lumens each. I believe when you look them up on eBay, I think they give you total lumens for both lights and not each light. So I'm pretty sure they're probably like 600 lumens each or something like that, or 800 lumens each, because total lumens was supposed to be 1600 lumens. So here I'm showing you why I designed the handle the way I did. I leave the opening on the handle, so that way whenever you gig a flounder, generally you stab the flounder, you stick the spear into the ground, and then so now you have one hand on the spear and then the other hand in your light. A good way to free up your hands is just to simply slip the light over the spear, and now the spear is supporting the light, which actually frees up one of your hands. With that free hand, you can then reach down and pick up the flounder from under the water, or if you use a net, you can use your net to grab that flounder, and essentially this frees up your hand and it doesn't let your lights float away. You don't have to drop your light or put it down anywhere. Your light will always be next to you, and this will make things a little bit easier. At least it does for me. So this is how it's going to look inside the battery box. If you decide to use a car battery like me, you would just simply put the gator clips on. The battery cover would then go on. you can have the wires hanging out, or you can tuck in the access wires. Generally, I usually tuck in the access wires and have the plug inside the battery box, so that way it ensures the plugs don't actually fall into the water, and this keeps the plugs kind of safe. So here I'm putting in the final touches on the rear wheels. On mine, the round bar already had a pressure cap on one end for the wheel. This bar actually came off a cart that I had, and when you cut the pipe for the axle, you want to make sure that you don't make it too close or make it too perfect, because if you don't allow some slack in the axle, what'll end up happening is you'll have too much pressure on these little pressure caps, and they'll eventually pop off after a while. So if you just make it somewhat tight and just have a little bit of slop in it, what this will then do is it'll allow the axle to kind of slide back and forth when it needs to, and it'll keep the little press on cap from popping off unnecessarily.
So as you can see here, I'm shaving down inside so that way it'll sit flush. With the poles, because they start off flat, and by doing this it'll help with the longevity of it. It'll have less side to side motion. If you don't have a grinder, you can just use a fowler, but the grinder obviously is faster. But here's the difference between the two. And then when you do these, instead of grinding the angle here, you just simply grind these out some. You basically would just grind it out to where it's an oval right here.
Alright guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep a running total on all the parts on the corner, and then at the end of the video I'll show you a full list of stuff that I bought. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we got here. So first things first is this kayak. It's a 6-foot kayak. I bought this used, but there's a couple options that you have. You can always buy them brand new. I believe Academy has them, Walmart has them. You can get them for fairly cheap. I believe Academy and Walmart have them for around $100. But if you kind of keep your eye out on Craigslist or some kind of offer up or whatever, I'm pretty sure you can get them for pretty cheap. This particular one I got for $40. And then the cooler's not, I'm not going to include the pricing on the cooler because the cooler is really not a part of the build. You can put whatever cooler you want on here. Then there's the battery box. Again, optional. If you plan on doing your own battery box, like your own custom battery box, you probably won't want this, but if you do, you can get these at Academy for pretty cheap. Bucket, again, bucket is optional. You know, you can get a bucket anywhere. But let's go ahead and get into the gritty. So we have 4 rod holders, 3 in total for 3/4 inch PVC. I bought 2, but I also had a lot of scrap pieces left. So ideally, you're gonna want to buy 3 PVC pipes. This will be enough to do the whole rigging and the gig lights. As far as the 3-way splitters, you can count them out. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 3-way splitters, 45-degree angles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the other side, 6, 7. So angled 45-degree angles, there's total of 7. Total 90-degree angles. Again, so 1, 2, and then 3 and 4. And now the next thing will be these right here. Remember, these are 3/4 inch, and they have a little screw in on the other end of this. So you're gonna need 4 of these, and then the proper cap to screw into them. You know, even when you screw these in, they seem like they'll screw in pretty tight, but you'll need those caps because eventually this plastic will eventually move around and shift around, and they'll come loose eventually. So, you know, you're gonna want to get the other end to screw in, so that way there's something stiff on the other side to keep it from sliding out in the future. The next thing are gig lights. You know, you'll need 2 of them. Well, you don't need 2 of them, but you can get 2 of them, and you know, you can always take a buddy out with you. And then you have your 2 wheels. And then I bought these little end caps that you press on. And then you want to buy insulated cabling. This is audio cable. 20 feet of this stuff. Because 20 feet will be plenty enough to clear the kayak, clear the pipe, and also give you plenty of room to walk around with. And then I bought these little special plugs that just makes it a little bit nicer, easier to plug in and out. And then the little gator grips to put on the battery right here. And then of course you still need your gigs and things like that. The only mistake I made when building this kayak was this part right here. I really should have waited to glue this together, because this actually ends up being too short. So you have to kind of lift it up at a higher angle. If I hadn't glued this together, then I could have extended this out like another maybe 3-4 inches, and then it would have been just perfect, because it would have brought it down about right here, and you wouldn't have to pick it up as high as an angle to make it roll properly. But it's still pretty stable. And then of course you can't forget these right here. These are the 3/4 inch pipe connector, conduit fittings. And then of course I had to make my special bucket for this. Also, I can't forget the pad eyes. I had a few of these left over from a previous project, but you can get like 50 of these pad eyes for like $10. These essentially help you strap down the cooler, the battery, the bucket, things like that. Well guys, there you have it. That's the kayak build right there. Hopefully you guys take the time to make one of these for yourself. And I mean, technically it is kind of expensive to build once you add up everything. You know, once you add up the battery, the cooler, the bucket, the kayak, and all the little knick-knack pieces. But then again, you know, it makes the fishing more enjoyable, especially if you do a lot of wade fishing. You know, if you go gigging, it makes it a lot easier. You know, overall, it's about how much time we can spend on the water and enjoy it. You know, as you can see in some of my other fishing videos, I use this quite a bit. And had I not been using this, there's just some fish that I would have never caught. And so, you know, take a chance, spend a little bit of money, get out there, catch some fish. You never know what you get.